Hey everyone, this is Zach with Deeply Driven Outdoors. Today I am sitting in the shop of Iowa Hunting Products with Brandon. If you're not aware, if you don't follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I've recently gotten a partnership with Iowa Hunting Products. They make all kinds of calls for turkey. They make pot calls, diaphragm calls. They make goose calls, duck calls, all sorts of great products like that. I'm sitting in his shop. He's going to tell us a little bit about Iowa Hunting Products as a company and show around the shop a little bit, kind of see how the magic is made, so to speak. Yeah, so I am sitting here with Brandon from Iowa Hunting Products, and he is the owner of Iowa Hunting Products. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. How long have you been making your own calls?
Well, it started as a hobby. A little bit of background about me. Ended up having a back injury about 8 years ago. Took away majority of my ability to hunt and doing the things that I enjoy, and decided I wanted to learn how to make a duck call just as something to do. Started the process, started buying some equipment, and it became kind of expensive. So I either decided whether I'm going to jump into this or jump out. So we kept moving forward. Got some products developed and went into business about 2 years ago, selling just as a hobby in a sense out of the house. And then this last year we moved into the current shop that I'm in. We've been here about a year. So we started as a necessity to find something to do from a hobby standpoint to keep my mind busy and maybe learn a few things along the way, and then ended up turning into a business.
Sure. So what was your first call like? I mean, were you just doing that were you trying to make your own call, or were you thinking ahead you wanted to open up a shop to make calls?
No, there was no intent of opening up a shop to make calls. I wanted to learn how to make a call for myself.
Sure.
And I didn't even know you had to buy jigs for tone boards. I mean, I was clueless. I mean, I hunted my whole life, but I just didn't know how to make any of that stuff, and I wasn't overly handy when it comes to tools.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah. So the fact that I've got all 10 fingers is a major accomplishment, but it wasn't. There was never any thought about going into business, and with my back and some of the health issues I had, it really didn't cross my mind. It was just more of maybe I could teach myself something, and if I sold a few on the side, great. But
sure,
because the first tone board I ever made, I ended up I didn't have a jig. I cut it by hand, and I thought there's no way people do it this way, because it would take years to produce 10 calls, because you cut everything by hand. But so you teach yourself along the way, and then you get the gist of it. Then you got to work on perfecting your sound, and then get into repeatability. So, there was no intent though to really start a company over the deal.
Was your first call so you're making it for yourself,
mm-hmm.
and then was your first one? Did you go out and call birds with it, or did it take you a little while to kind of get that perfected?
It took a while. Yeah, because I probably went through 25 tone boards before I got it to sound somewhat normal. Because there's a lot of information on the internet, but some of the details they're not there. So you just have to make tone boards, and basically you just end up messing them up.
Yeah.
Just to find out what works and what doesn't. So it took several months of messing with the tone board before I got something that I liked, and then I had to figure out how to make it repeatable. And the intent was just to have one good call and go from there, but it ended up growing into something more than we ever thought it would be.
Awesome. You're based out of Central Iowa right now.
Correct.
You've been in business for a year. You said you moved to this place about a year ago. Is that right? Okay, yeah. That's when you started.
Yeah, that's when we set up our LLC. We sold product as basically out of the house as a hobby, because my shop was in the garage and in the basement. So, but in terms of setting up LLC and making it official, it's been a year. And
Sure.
then we moved in. We're in Newton, Iowa. We're actually in one of the old Maytag headquarter buildings, and it worked out pretty well. It's got its own ventilation system, so I don't contaminate the other buildings and other rooms in here. So it was a pretty good fit for us.
Yeah, it works out good.
Yeah.
So you started making calls. Did you start with duck, goose?
Started with duck.
Duck?
Duck call was the first one that I started on, and then once I understood how to use a manual lathe, I realized that you can make just about everything that you from a turkey call, except for box call. But pot calls and duck calls and goose calls can all be made with the same lathe. We just had to have some different jigs and whatnot. But first call I was just going to make a duck call. I didn't have any intent of making a turkey call or a goose call. But once I started to learn how to use equipment, then I found out that I can make some other stuff too, and then I just taught myself, on that end, on how to cut a turkey call and some of the ins and outs of making it sound correctly with tone boards or with, I guess they're tone board. We use glass tone board, but just making calls and messing with them to figure out what changes affect sound, and then kind of found something we liked and went with it.
Nice. So how did you get started? So you offer several different types of turkey calls. You do the diaphragm, box, and pot call, right?
Right.
How did you kind of make the transition from doing duck calls to doing like box calls and pot calls and things like that?
The pot call was a pretty easy transition because of how you use it on a standard lathe. There was some things that you had to learn, but for the most part, it's the same. You're cutting different, but it's the same process. So that was an easy transition, just to learn how to make a pot call. Box call is a little bit different because you don't turn it on a lathe. Obviously, you have to use either a vertical mill or a router table, or you can. There's a number of different ways you can do it. And so that one was a little bit different. I ended up getting a small CNC, which we'll show you. Mostly it was because of my back and my ability to spend much time in a manual lathe, but it allowed us to bore out a box and make a box call where more efficiently. Prior to that, I was just using an old router and a router table, and we had some jigs made, but this is much more efficient. On the diaphragm call side, it was my shop was in the garage, and in winter it would get so cold that I'd go through so much propane it wasn't worth doing it. So I thought, well, I'll learn how to make diaphragm calls. So I can do that inside.
Yeah.
And so I bought a jig and started messing with that. And I have some coordination issues from my back injury. So that was tough to learn how to cut reeds and how to properly make them consistently. But we worked through it, but it was a way to fill a void for a couple months when you couldn't spend much time in the garage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those cold months are always hard for sportsmen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to find things to do. Well, so that's it in a nutshell for the most part. I know Brandon, so he's got diaphragm calls, pot calls, slate, or not slate calls. Well, slate too. Slate and the pot call.
Slate, copper, aluminum. We do some crystal. You can do a number of different materials, but copper is probably our biggest selling call.
Yeah. I liked it. So I got to demo these at the Iowa Deer Class this last weekend, and I like the copper a lot too. I'd only use slate and glass. I wasn't even aware of like the copper pot call really until I tried out the IHP one, and it's awesome. I think the purrs are easier on it. But yeah, so if you got diaphragm calls, you get the pot calls, box calls, duck, goose, you do double reed or single reed, right, for duck if you want, and then you get long barrel and short barrel goose calls.
Yeah, we have, they're both short reed goose calls, but we have one that's bored 3/4 inch, which is a standard short reed goose call, and then we bore one a little bit different, a little bit smaller, a little less air, a little easier to learn how to use. But same gut system, they're just built a little different.
So you've got Man's Best Friend line of calls as well, right?
That's correct. We bought Man's Best Friend actually in August. Deadshot Call Company started the business about 3 years ago. Deadshot now makes image rod, does the image rod technology. When I first saw the product, I wasn't making calls yet, but I thought it was just a really cool idea because everybody that hunts loves their dog, and probably more than people. And so with Deadshot transferring out of a call building position into a call supplier position, there was a need for them to keep that product line going but not do it themselves. And so timing in life is everything, and it just worked out. So we acquired that product in August, and we have a specific Facebook page for it, but pretty rewarding deal. We take the ashes of pets and humans and whatnot and incorporate it into a duck or turkey call. We can do a grunt call as well.
Oh, for deer too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
It's kind of a unique way to. I feel like a lot of people when their hunting partner passes, that's kind of the last time you go to the field. It's a good way to take kind of their memory back out and kind of keep that with you forever, really. Keep
hunting with them, and if you look in the retail market outside the hunting industry, there's all kinds of product available for your pet when your pet dies. but there wasn't really in the hunting side of things. And like I said, if you're a duck hunter, you understand that bond with your dog, and that was the original thought, was just to keep it down that lane, and it's expanded into. We had a lady that had lost a son at 21 years old, and we did a project for them, and it's rewarding. It makes a big difference, and it's not just a duck call. It actually, this duck call has a purpose, which makes it rewarding.
Well, if you guys want to see how it's made, where the magic happens, show you around the shop a little bit.
Sure.
Show me around the shop. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Okay. We make a lot of blanks in house. We have a man's best friend product line, which we forgot to mention earlier, which we do a lot of custom blanks, and so I have all the tools to do so. Pressure pot, Lumalite, part A and B, gives you some flexibility on color, and then I got all my dyes and whatnot, and then got a vacuum pot and a little oven for drying. We can stabilize wood and whatnot. I don't do it from a retail standpoint. I just do my own product. I do it in house. So I call it the poor man's CNC. It's a Tormach. It's a good machine. It's got a little rapid turn, so we can operate it as a mill or as a lathe. Taught myself how to program, taught myself how to run a machine, and really the biggest purpose behind this was to get me off my feet standing at a lathe. I just physically couldn't do it all day, and which limited the amount of calls I can make per day. So this was a good investment. I'm still learning the ins and outs of it, but provides a much more consistent product. We just have basic shop tools in this area: table saw, little work saw there for cutting out my duck calls on the jig, and some of our older equipment, some of the router tables that we had for box calls, and some old wood down there. Got a duplicator for the lathe. I don't use it very often, but this standard mini lathe, that's what I started with. That's my original lathe. That's kind of what started this whole process. A couple drill presses. We have a vacuum system in here. We got a vacuum in the room over here. It sucks for dust control. You can open up 3-4 vents or individual vents, and it just kind of keeps the small particles out of the air.
You ever still use the original lathe?
That's still, you can tell, it's beat up, but
yeah,
that was the original one, yeah.
Nice.
There was a lot of bloody knuckles and bruises from that thing. This is my somewhat finished product display. On a duck call and whatnot, we usually tune it before it goes out based on how you want your call set up. But we get the tone board to the point where we know it's good, and then we can do a lot of read adjustments from there. So the top shelf is some of the duck calls that we have on hand, and middle shelf are short read goose calls, finished box calls, some pot calls down below. We make our own striker as well, and then the diaphragm calls that we talked about earlier are down here. But there's a variety of different pots. The cherry, hedge, and walnut are our big sellers. We do some exotic woods as well, but our number one selling call is hedge and copper, and it's just got a great sound to it. So it's a little bit about what we do.
So that's it. I just want to take a little bit of time and come up here, show you guys the IHP shop where all the magic happens for Iowa hunting products. Make sure to check them out. I know we got turkey season coming right up. You know, they're made right here, not only in America, but made right here in the great state of Iowa. Great guys. So check them out. I'm going to put links down below for you to check them out on the website if you want to place an order. They said they do diaphragm calls, they do box calls, pot calls, you know, your duck and goose calls of different varieties, you know, acrylic, wood, short barrel, long barrel, single reed, double reed, you know, whatever your flavor is that you want, they've got them. So I'll have links down below. Thanks for checking out the video from Deeply Driven Outdoors. I'm going to catch you guys next time. Thank you.